George Kambosos does not belong in the ring against anyone that's wearing a world title. We rank fighters at levels. Their opponents, their contenders, prospects, champions, legends. George Kambosos is this one in between journeyman and prospect. It's called gatekeeper. And the gatekeeper is the person that you put into the line of fire of a fighter that's actually has potential, but you have to test them. And a worn shop fighter will always push them to a place that if they're not real, they won't make it over that hurdle. But George Kambosos, he's kind of dropped from prospect down to gatekeeper. And that's his role, because the first thing that I thought was, what in the hell did I just watch? We wanted to see Hitchinson get enough tests to say, I'm credible. I'm ready for the next level. I'm calling out all of these fighters. And in boxing, it's easy to say you want the smoke. But what I'm going to explain to you is what exactly is it that you were watching when you watched George Kambosos inside of the ring against Richard Hitchinson. When you see these two pair off, Hitchinson walks into the ring and he has absolutely no expression. Well, there's a term that we give every fighter at every level when they're entering the professional rankings. And here are the levels of fighter. First, you have the person that comes in as an opponent. We have to find these guys so that we can fill up cards. And then you have journeyman. You have a guy who believes he can fight. He travels around just taking fights because in his mind, he believes that he actually can beat world-class level fighters without proper training. And that's a journeyman. So he'll always go from town to town looking for fights. But the fact of the matter is he never wins the fights. Now, I must say, a journeyman will give you tough fights because a fight is a fight. You got a lot of experience, then a fight is a fight. But boxing is a sport. There are things that you have to know, right? And once I explain this to you, then I'm going to explain to you what happened with George Kambosos in the fight and many other fighters like Tank Davis also. This thing is designed to take fighters from one level to the next. Now, once you get past the journeyman, you find the prospect. And that prospect is a one that's notable. He had an amateur career, so you can watch him. Now, once you see what he can do, now you got to put him in there and test him. Now, you don't want to just throw him in there against a contender. So in between a prospect getting to that next level, you have to put him in there with what comes directly after the prospect. And when the prospect is going up that ladder, one thing he'll be tested against, and that's what we call a gatekeeper. And a gatekeeper is the person that's shop worn. They've been at the top. They always come up short, but they got a lot of experience and they are one tough cookie. And they're rough and tough like a $3 steak, and they'll be all over you like a $5 suit. That's a gatekeeper. And that's the final test of a prospect before he goes into what we call the contender realm. And after you go into the contender realm, and then now you have the champions. And then after the champions, it's legends. Because there are levels to this thing. Just because you get there does not mean you stay there. And just because you say, I'm wearing this belt, does not mean you're going to reign as champion. And if you reign as champion, then that means you're more likely to become a legend. Now, a lot of guys don't think that far. They just say, I want to become champion. And therefore, that's all they become. They don't take it further. They're not first ballot Hall of Famers. They're guys who I've watched as of late that just got into the Hall of Fame and they've been retired for 30 years. That's a shame, but that's the game of boxing. But what I break down, I'm going to give it to you in a short cookie, and you can watch the full video on the science of this after the fact. The link will be in the description, so make sure you subscribe. George Kambosos gets into the ring. He knows damn well he's not going to win this fight. But when it's all said and done, you want to take every opportunity. Right now, he's a gatekeeper, and he knows he's a gatekeeper. Now, your ego will not let you accept it, but the fact of the matter is this. If you can't be a world champion anymore, and the only reason you got past this first one you did and won the undisputed title is because this guy was shop worn for that night in that fight because he had something medically wrong and he definitely didn't take you serious. And you caught him in a place what we call the perfect storm. When George Kambosos steps into the ring, he believes in his mind that he can win, but in his heart, the truth is there. But what overplays in a fighter's mind is seeing himself win. But what does not play is something that is triggered in the nervous system. And this is what interferes with your judgment, with your ability to see everything that you don't have and what signs you're eluding and avoiding. And the signs are you don't know how to put it together against A-level fighters. That is a term in boxing. And you see this all the time. Guys think because they box a lot, they spar a lot, that they can actually carry out the task. But lo and behold, here's the fact. You don't understand that there's this term and it's above the thing that most fighters and trainers grasp on. And that is, my fighter has muscle memory. He knows all these skills, but I want to explain why I came up with the phrase, skills do not pay the bills. Because skills is not the all and end all. Because above skills is craft, and above craft is kg. And when I break it down, you're going to understand clearly. When you have muscle memory, that only says you understand how to do it. But when you have neuromuscular memory, that means your mind understands how to navigate and make adjustments. And this is the term that you have to get more familiar with, because when you get into a ring, you're not hitting pads anymore. And pads are actually detrimental to your ability to develop as a fighter, because it's a false sense of security and it actually throws your timing off as a fighter. That's why you see fighters not throwing combinations today. Everybody's a 1, 2, and maybe third punch. But nobody knows how to throw fluidly because they throw directly into a mitten pad. So we'll get into that on an entirely different day. But here's the deal. The fact that they don't have the muscle memory to actually throw combinations fluidly. Go look at Sugar Ray Leonard. Go look at guys who really understood how to throw punches in bunches, right? And then the next thing is the muscles can do it, but that does not mean that the fighter understands when to do it, because it's a guessing game. But if it's neuromuscular, that means wherever the mind goes, the body flows, and the mind can break down the calculation. If you do like this to someone close, they're gonna blink. That's the mind in control. If you throw a punch and a left hook behind it, that's mechanics. That's physical. The mind is not in control over that. That's muscle memory. So when George or any fighter goes into a ring and they try to go up against a fighter and they literally don't have neuromuscular memory, they're solely depending on muscle memory, everything that they did in training camp, that's what they're bringing. But they have no neuro responses. The minute that they get in too deep, what will happen is this, a term called neuroplasticity. And that is when the brain gets disrupted by a tornado, which is an event that it wasn't expecting. And it just goes out of sync. The wires no longer connect to the neurons. So your brain is left in what we call chaos. And the brain hates chaos. And when you see that, that's where you see a fighter go into fight or flight mode and they freeze up. And if you go back to Gervonta Davis versus Lamont Roach, that's exactly what you'll see there. Peace.